and welcome to the Victory Theater and an evening with Sri M. So tonight we have this amazing human being here, Sri M, and I sort of wanted to tell a little story. I was traveling in India with a friend, showing her all my favorite places in Bangalore. Places where my favorite place to get idlis, which are these delicious little pancakes that you have for breakfast, my favorite thing. And Mr. Jain, a Jyotish astrologer, we called him the 5-question man because you ask him 5 questions and he answers the questions in the order you ask them without even looking at them. And then I went to the bookstore to buy something for my husband, Jeff Kober, who you'll be seeing later tonight as well. He loves books, and so I asked Mr. Babu, who is another favorite friend of mine, what's the book, what book should I bring home to my husband from India? And he said, this book. Now this was in 2012. This book came out in 2010, I think. And what?
Can't remember.
and it was a bestseller in the nation of, national bestseller in India. Can you imagine a book being a bestseller in India? It must have sold a gazillion, copies. So I brought this home to Jeff. He read it, immediately said, I can meet this guy. And he met him in Long Island. I think Krishna Das was there at the time he met. Funny story, maybe Jeff will tell you sometime. And then he went to go see him at Brighton Bush at a retreat, which I highly recommend, and then we both went to Watsonville this year and last year. So we've seen just a little bit of him, really, but enough to know that he's an amazing human being. And a lot of you don't actually know him, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. That he was, at 19, he felt compelled to go live in the Himalayas, or in the Himalayan Massive. And there he met his master, who he studied with for 3.5 years, sort of, roughing it, I think. But, and he learned a lot, he learned and learned and learned a lot of things, and then he had lots of adventures, which, by the way, I won't bother telling you about. You should read it in this book. This book tells you everything, including the time he met Krishnamurti and spent time with him. I mean, just incredible journey that he's been on. And now he's been given leave by his master to go into the world and teach and come to America and go all over the world. And he's not only is he an educator and a spiritual master, but he's also a, what's the word?
Social reformer.
Thank you, social reformer. That's what you get from being married. He was born a Muslim, and he has studied all religions. And in doing so, I think he's a very practical teacher, and what this world needs right now, because he brings together all the disparate parts in a way that is very, I don't know, it's like head nodding, like you go, oh yeah, I agree. I wanted to say besides this wonderful book, which is called Apprenticed to a Himalayan Master, a Yogi's Autobiography, he's also written a novel, which is his first novel, which is selling like hotcakes, called Shunya. And he's written lots of other books, so look at everything he's written, but most of all, let's enjoy him tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I need to go back to our tradition and chant something for a minute before we start the talk. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamaduchyate Purnasya Purnamataya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shanti, everybody understands. Peace. The other we will discuss after a while. So, I don't want to go into something mysterious now. Let's come to facts in day-to-day life as we live our life in this world. Adele said that most things are in the book, in the autobiography, they are not sorry. There's much more, I know. You couldn't put everything together in a book, so. Anyway, so I'm going to start with, of course, you have a question-answer session, I think, after this you're going to take. It's in the best traditions of the country I come from that there's always a dialogue. It's not as if the rishi says, I say this, you believe it. No. Or I give this, you eat it. It's always like, I say this, what do you think? So it's called a dialogue. You know what a dialogue is. A dialogue is not an argument. It's, if it's an argument, then I have decided that I'm right. And you have decided that you're right. There's no movement there. Because then there is no discussion. There is no... This is an argument then. You try to prove yourself and I'm trying to prove. Clash. But a dialogue is when two people sitting together try to figure out what is this thing that we are looking at. And from ancient times there have been these dialogues between the rishis, who are the wise men of that time. There were also a couple of wise women, okay? People keep asking me, what about the women? So, who had these wonderful discussions or dialogues in depth about universal questions, not just metaphysical and philosophical, but how they also apply to our daily life. Otherwise there's no point. We can discuss philosophy, you can go to metaphysics, but if it doesn't touch our lives, then it makes no sense. I mean, we can write volumes or read a lot, but it doesn't make sense. So, now what the question that I'm going to ask now is not my own question, but which has been in existence for 2,000 years. I'm sure in other parts of the world, but in India there were a set of people whose only interest was to find this out. Where others were doing other things, the Indian mind was trying to figure out philosophical, metaphysical, spiritual truths. So, which is why we have a rich tradition. It's not that it's not there in other places. Anyway, whether it still remains in India or not, it's a different thing. We can discuss it later. Recently, 5 years ago, I met His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He was having a talk in India, in Delhi. So I had gone there, and he started by saying, you know, I consider all Indians as gurus, because Gautama, the Buddha, was from here, from India. So I consider all Indians as my spiritual gurus. And then he stopped for a second and he said, not the modern Indian. I started laughing. So, well, let me tell you that there are also good modern Indians who think about it. There is one sitting before you. I belong to this generation, not the past. So the stream still remains, it's not gone. So my attempt is to make people, to connect them back to that stream which has been there. So the question which has been asked for a millennium is, what do we actually seek in life? What is it that we are looking for? What is it because of which we keep working, going up, getting jobs, running businesses, getting into Hollywood or out of it, making money, having a wife or several? What is it that we are looking for in this whole business of life? What's it that keeps us moving as life evolves? There must be something. Otherwise we would all just sleep, do nothing. We're all looking for something, searching for something. We look into whether we find it or not at the end, but we're looking for something. I mean, it's a very common sense thing. Every one of us is looking for happiness. I mean, even the person who commits suicide feels that if he's rid of the sorrow that's troubling him, the grief, then he's free. Now, to be free of grief is to be happy. We don't know what happens after he commits suicide, but this is an attempt again to be free of pain. So, all of us, all human beings, are looking for happiness in some way or the other. Also, happiness also means we are looking for fulfillment. Fulfillment, completeness. Today I feel, well, I'm not complete. I've just reached a certain stage in life. I will probably become complete and be fulfilled if I go ahead and do something else. So I keep working. I'm not saying there's anything against that, but we are looking at the facts. So we all do this. We want to become complete. We want to become full. We feel that something is missing and we need to fill it. Temporarily, we feel that we are now fulfilled, but then it doesn't last for long. It moves. There are people who are single and who after a while begin to feel, some people may not, begin to feel that, well, I'm not fulfilled. There's something missing. Then you go and I don't know how it works here. Get married or have a girlfriend or whatever. Now the honest question is, does one really get fulfilled? Because one does really get fulfilled, then one wouldn't substitute one and get another one. Or does marriage make you complete? Temporarily, yes. But there is still a gaping kind of emptiness which we need to fill in. I know people who are extremely rich, who have everything that one would think would make them happy and complete, but they're still searching for something. I'm going to give you a scenario which happens, used to happen more, now it's less in India. Imagine that under a tree sits a fakir. You know what's a fakir? A man who has no possessions. Torn clothes. I think during the time when the flower people lived here, many of them used to be like fakirs. Well, they were doing something else, but whatever. So there was this fakir sitting under a tree with torn clothes and probably a small begging bowl in his hand. But on his face is an ecstatic smile. And you will find that there's a long line of a queue of cars parked, all kinds of cars. For good measure, maybe even a couple of Land Rovers and Rolls Royces. People in India are rich now, they can afford. And they've all come to see this man, this fakir. What does he have that they don't have? He has nothing. He has a begging bowl in his hand. His clothes are torn. Yes, but there is an ecstatic smile on his face. He's in some kind of a great ecstasy. So two things are clear. These guys who have come to see him, with all that they have, perhaps they brought only one car, they may be having several in the garage, haven't found something and they're seeking it. They're trying to find the happiness that they don't get with all this. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a car, okay? But it's clear that they come to a man who has nothing, but who has happiness to offer, perhaps, hoping that they might get something out of that. Peace of mind, tranquility, happiness, which is at a premium. With all this, they come and they take blessings and they go back. Of course, there are people who come and say, oh, please bless us so that we can get a promotion and things like that. But apart from that, he's still seeking something. What can this man who has nothing give? The thing is, this man has found that the completeness, the fulfillment, the happiness that we seek, because of which life keeps moving, of course, cannot be found anywhere outside. Rather, if you turn around and look within, you might probably find it out inside. This man has found it. I mean, this is the whole understanding of the Upanishads, the Vedas, science of yoga, that what you seek, you're quite justified in seeking it. It's a built-in thing to seek. The brain has a built-in, what is it called? Tendency to seek fulfillment, to grow, to become big, to find happiness. It's built in. There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing is we keep doing it till we finally rest in peace and we don't find it. You know? What happened? And after when they put RIP, rest in peace, you don't know actually if they found it or not. You don't know. But we are resting. Hopefully. In fact, my master, Maheswarnath Babaji, used to say, well, it could also be RIP, rise if possible. You know, right? Done. So, this is our life. Till finally we are laid to rest. Can we find, have we found this? Now, if you ask most people, they would say, well, I'm almost there, but I need to do more. Which is okay. Except when you begin to understand, when one begins to understand that this happiness that we seek is not so dependent on, not completely dependent on external things and things that we possess, but rather an internal state, if you can only turn in and look. There was this great weaver saint in India, in Banaras. Well, he used to be a weaver, a handloom weaver. I don't know if you have seen handlooms. They go like this with their hands. And he lived in Banaras, the city of Banaras, which is famous for being the city of Shiva, the Lord of Yogis, and so on. It's getting cleaned up. It's a dirty city, but there's something special about Banaras, which... for me, yes. Anyway, this weaver saint, his name was Kabir Das. He lived in Banaras and he earned an honest living by weaving cloth, not by selling meditation. Okay. And he said something very interesting. He said that we all seek happiness, there's no question. Wonderful, that's how it should be. However, he said, we are like the musk deer. I don't know if you've heard of the musk deer. In India it's called the kasturi mriga. The musk that's in the perfume, musk deer. In the Himalayas, there's a small variety of deer which is called the kasturi mriga, the musk deer. In a certain season, it has a little pouch under its belly where, in a particular season, musk is produced, generated. And when the musk is generated, there is this wonderful fragrance filling the air. You know how musk, you must have found it in your perfumes, musk. I advise people not to use musk perfumes because many deer have been killed for musk. Anyway. It's up to you. So, when this wonderful fragrance wafts in the air, this poor deer, D-E-E-R, also D-E-A-R, the poor deer, not knowing the source of this fragrance, looks for it everywhere. It pushes its snout into thorny bushes, bleeds, but it doesn't know that this fragrance is right under its belly. Kabir said, this is the situation, this is the case of us human beings. There is a fragrance. We are looking for the source. The source is not outside, the source is inside. And when we enjoy it, when we feel the fragrance, when we come in touch with outward circumstances. It's simply that a little bit is released from inside. When I come in contact with something that I really love, I'm happy. Yes. Why? Because inside, that little happiness is released from its fountainhead, from its source. Okay, let's look at it in another way. Okay, I have a small car, and then I decide I would be really happy if I have a good, big, fast car. Okay, I know the feeling. I drive. So, some people are now sitting with me. So, I think, if I have a big car, it'd be nice to drive. Okay? And so I go for the car. I acquire it. I buy it. Or whatever. And then, for some time, I'm supremely happy. Some time. And so I think, now because of the car, because I've acquired the car, I'm happy. Just look at it a little carefully. I'm happy because the craving for the car has temporarily been suspended. Not because I have the car. Yeah, because I have the car, the craving has been suspended. So therefore, I'm not craving for something at that point for some time. Till the insurance and other things don't show up. So I'm happy. And then I want to change it because it's dissatisfaction again and I need to get something more. So then again I'm in pain because the mind is craving, it's reaching out. And again I acquire something and for some time I think I'm very happy. What I don't realize is this happiness is my state of mind because for some time, for a short while, I've stopped the craving. When I stop the craving, the mind settles down in quietness. It enjoys driving the car. The feeling. Right? So I enjoy. Now this enjoyment, the ancient rishis said, comes from inside you. Your very essence, the core of your being, the essence of your consciousness, by its very nature, no matter who you are or what you are, young, old, man, woman, black, white, brown, yellow, whatever in between, we all have this consciousness which is the essence of our being, the core of our being, whose very nature is happiness. Independent of anything external, and not knowing this, we look for it outside. But then if you don't look for it, the whole life would come to a grinding halt. That's why the whole thing is moving. So I'm not saying we should halt it. I'm saying while we go about it, we should also understand that this thing, man, which you seek is inside you. Now, when you turn inward and begin to look at this, the whole spiritual training which is given, what is called sadhana, is the way of how to get to this fountainhead of happiness. And this core of our being has been described in the ancient textbooks with the word Satchidananda. No, Satchidananda is not one word, it's 3 syllables put together, of course, one word, like Sat, Chit and Ananda. Now, Sat means that which is always, as opposed to that which is here now and gone tomorrow. Most things are here today, including myself. I don't know how many years this body is going to last. So it's temporary. We are not here all the time. So therefore we are not Sat, not the reality. Yes, there is something in us which is, we'll come to this. So, Sat means that which is as opposed to that which is not but we think is. Well, okay, let's go further up. somebody said, Plato said, that there are two things in this universe. One is, 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 and the other, that this is that which is, and that which is not but is ever becoming. Not my words, Plato. That which is and that which is not but is ever becoming. The world that we see is something which is ever becoming. And since it's ever becoming, it's unstable. It keeps moving. But there is a background, a basement from which it all starts, and that is the core of our consciousness. This is that which is, and it's never becoming anything. It is. And its very nature, therefore, is called Sat, which means reality. Okay. You would say, but what happens when we die? What happens to this reality? Well, we believe, or we know that this also lasts even after the body is stopped, has gone to RIP. And Sat, and it's also called Chit, because the essence of our being, the core of our consciousness, you and me, all of us, is of the nature of consciousness, Chit. It's not just material. It's conscious, it is aware. It's that which sits behind this complex computer called the brain and becomes aware of all the computer is doing. Because some people think that consciousness is a result of the brain. We say that the brain is there, but the consciousness is the awareness that is behind the brain. It's independent of it. As long as we mistake the self as the brain, then it is the same. But the moment you start looking carefully, it's different. So Chit, the word used, Chit means consciousness. It's not just a material, inanimate object, but it's conscious and aware. And the last syllable is Ananda, and its nature is happiness. By its very nature, without anything from outside, its nature is pure happiness. Therefore, it's called Satchidananda. Now, there is an ancient, well, let's not say ancient, it's about 1,600 years old, I don't know if that's ancient, textbook in India called the Mandukya Upanishad. You know, Manduk actually means a frog. Mandukya Upanishad. And it has just 12 verses. It's one of the Upanishads, which is the essence of the teachings of ancient Indian philosophy. And this particular Upanishad has just 12 verses. And it discusses, it doesn't say what you do or what you don't do, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. No. It looks at the states of consciousness which are common to all living beings, more so human beings. And that is, one, the waking state. I think we are all familiar with the waking state. I hope everybody is awake. So we are all aware of the waking state. When we wake up in the morning, this is the waking state. I see this, I see that, I see the world, I need my steaming cup of coffee, and then I'm fine. My waking state. Or the newspaper, I don't know what. Nowadays, it's the fine. So, morning, awake. It's called Jagrati, the state of wakefulness. Now, you know this. It's common to all humanity. Everybody wakes up at some point. So, it's common. It's the same for all. That's where I say all experiments of equality and unity have failed in all parts of the world, because economically and in other ways we can never become equal. It's impossible. So many experiments have been done politically, So many. However, we are saying that there is one way you can really be equal. And that is when you realize that the essence of your being, which you have, is not different from the essence of other people's being. And therefore that's a common factor. Plus the fact that we all are at some point awake, or at other times sleeping. This is common to all. So therefore we must be one. You may sleep at different times, but so the waking state. And then the Upanishad says the next step, the next stage, which we all experience, common factor, is the dream state. Everybody dreams. Night dream, day dream, all dreams. This is common to all humanity. Everybody dreams. In fact, they say that the most, the part of our sleep where we work out all our desires and all our eccentricities and all our imagination is the REM stage, which is the rapid eye movement. When you're dreaming, you're watching fun, you're having fun. There's a circus going on. In fact, we are like schizophrenic. We're doing all kinds of things at the same time. You might see a tiger whose face is like a goat. All the imagination that we have becomes true. And sometimes even what we don't realize we have. And it is so real that when you wake up, you're looking around to see where did that tiger go. So it has been very real when you're dreaming. When you wake up, well, you think it's unreal. Why? Because it was a dream. Now I've woken up. It doesn't exist anymore. What if we have been sleeping for so long that we never wake up? Maybe the tiger still exists. Anyway, so the dream state, it need not be a tiger, it could be a mermaid. Anyway, so from waking state, dream state, equal for all human beings. Everybody has it. Then there is this deep sleep. We all love this deep sleep when the REM is over and there is no consciousness of anything external or internal. In deep sleep, we are not even aware of where we are, who we are, what we are. And here in deep sleep, everybody is equal. The boss and the worker and the chauffeur, everybody goes to sleep. And in deep sleep, the chauffeur doesn't know the boss is sleeping next door. Equal. It's an equalizing factor. There's one more equalizing factor. After a profound discussion and so on, you go to the toilet. We are all equal. Standing on either side and saying, hey, so what did you mean by that? So, waking state, dream state, and deep sleep are common to all. And the Upanishad says, there's something which, like when you sleep, you're not aware in deep sleep. But when you wake up, invariably we say, oh, that was a blissful sleep. So there was some awareness at that point, which is not, at that point it wasn't there, but it must have been there somewhere. Otherwise we wouldn't say it was a blissful sleep. We always, wonderful, heaven. So, now the Upanishad says, we are talking about the core of a consciousness which is called Satchidananda, which is common to all, and which is not limited to the body, but in fact, those who experience it say that it is one in all. It may be working through different centers, but it's only one. There are no different. So, Upanishad says, apart from these three states, if you look at them carefully, there has been a witness in all these three states. In waking state, there is a witness. In dream, there is a witness. In deep sleep, there must have been a witness. Otherwise, you wouldn't say, I had a wonderful, blissful sleep. You are not aware of it at that time. The Upanishad says, when one realizes that witness, when we come face to face with that witness, which is there in all the three states, that is called the Turiya. or the stage where you realize that this spark of divinity, which is in every heart, is the same. It's only working through different centers. It's one universal, infinite thing, and it can happen only when we are free of our conditionings, all conditionings. More than that, when we realize that the cravings that we have in this world are actually unconsciously the mind seeking this which is within. So, if you turn within and look, it's there. Now, the question is, if we have found it and found eternal peace, can we function in this world? Or are we going to retire in the forest? Please, we are not taking LSD. We are looking at the core of our own consciousness, the essence of our consciousness. In fact, we should live in a more mature and more intelligent manner than when we have not found it. It's not as if we run away. In fact, running away is no solution, although short periods of solitude are good for developing the understanding of oneself. Short periods of solitude are good. I'm not saying they're not. May be essential also sometimes, especially when people are too extrovert. It might be good to introvert and go into solitude for some time. But that's not the solution, permanent solution. You have to find that essence in us, which is common to all and which is blissful and which is the essence in everything. Everything and everybody. But you need to come out from solitude. The only time you can understand how you actually are. Because we believe that someone who has touched the core of one's being becomes a kinder, a better person, a tranquil person, and a blissful person. So if you still are jealous or angry or irritated, then you've not touched it. Temporarily, yes, a couple of smokes of pot might take you into a temporary state. I've gone through all that. So, but it doesn't give you that reality which is permanent. In India, many sadhus smoke. So, suppose I am in a cave in the Himalayas. Well, I did spend time in a cave. I agree, I accept that. But I came out. Suppose I'm in a cave. Now, my master, Maheswarnath Babaji, I think without whose active indulgence and blessings, this brain would have remained cross and like a piece of clay. One day said to me, hey, suppose you meditate for, let's say, 6 hours or 7 hours or 12 hours a day inside the cave for 12 years. Do you think you'll be free of anger and jealousy? Because anger and jealousy, hatred, these are the things that cause your mind to become agitated. And an agitated mind cannot find its core. It has to be tranquil and quiet and kind. You may see many visions, but you cannot see as many visions as somebody who takes LSD. You cannot. So that's not a criteria. That's what I'm trying to say. Has your mind become better? Not if you can fly in the air. That's not a criteria either. Now you need to fly in there. You just have to buy a ticket. So you don't have to do pranayam. So that's not a criteria. So I'm sitting in the cave. He said, if for 13 years you're meditating 12 hours a day in the cave, if you think you're free of your anger and your crude behavior and your jealousy and so on, are you really serious? He said. Who are you going to be jealous of in the cave? There's nobody there. Who would you get angry with? The walls of the cave? I can understand you're practicing something, that's okay. But when you come out of the cave and get into a bus, and if somebody kicks you on the leg, especially with a stiletto heel, then you know where you stand. Whether I really am free of anger and jealousy. And I think of these, the jealousy is one of the toughest thing to get rid of. And it's very strange because there's no logic. You're happy and I'm unhappy. Right? This one has a good car. So what? So, if one can deliberately, actively watch ourselves and get rid of these, knowing that what you seek is inside you, and there are no competitors to find it, you are equal to anybody else trying to find it, then the mind becomes tranquil, calm, quiet, and in that quietness, you suddenly realize in a flash that this consciousness which I have found, which is happiness itself, is the same that is in every heart. It's not different. And then you can no longer hate somebody. Otherwise, bless them that curse you is only in a book. It doesn't become actor. Now, it is this treasure that we have, that we possess, every one of us. You don't have to be born in a special way to do that. This happiness that we possess, this treasure that we possess, was spoken of by another person who I think was a great yogi who walked in Jerusalem some 1,000 years ago. He said, lay treasures in your heart where thieves do not break in and steal. Nobody can steal it. So this is what we are all looking for. And I think so. I may be wrong. I think we're looking for this happiness. And if you turn in, so all the methods of meditation, all the methods of spiritual discipline are meant to turn your mind, make it tranquil, peaceful, kinder, turn it within and touch that joy which is within us. And then you lead a joyous life. You can do what you want. But you naturally not do things that harm others. I mean, you can't. I mean, it doesn't happen that way. And people will see that you have tremendous energy and they would wonder, where is this coming from? There seems to be no known source for it. You don't charge yourself in a plug, like a Tesla. So, I think also that when this happens, then we have proceeded far ahead of evolution, normal evolution. I think the brain has evolved as much as it can. The frontal lobes are evolved as best as they can. What we can acquire with them, we have acquired. I don't think there's much more. But there is one step which is beyond that. There are many centers in our system which are dormant and which have not been explored. The whole science of yoga is how to explore these. When you explore, you find that you're not just a small little being, but a universal being. So, this is the search, and this is what we're looking for, and this is where I hope all of us are going in some way or the other. Whatever be our beliefs, whatever be our practices, if this is not happening, then we need to look carefully and say, where are we wrong? Can we change this a bit? And there are different ways of looking at it. This is very interesting. There's not one way of looking at it. There are different ways, like different rivers and lakes and streams finally flow into the ocean. This is the ocean that you're looking at. You may approach it in different ways. Because I'm going to stop after this, okay? I won't bore you more because there is a question answer. I'm going to stop with a nice little story in case you need to revive a bit. Everybody likes stories. So this is a story from an ancient source which was popularized by the Sufi teacher. Many people think he was the inventor of the story. Well, he was not. This was popularized by a Sufi teacher called Jalaluddin Rumi, who kind of invented the order of the whirling dervishes. You might have seen if you go to Turkey. Well, now it's become a tourist thing, but so. But the story actually comes from ancient sources in India, the Jains. The Jains have a philosophy which says aneka yetadvad, which means the same thing but maybe differently looked at. So this story is about three blind men. This is the last story, okay? Three blind men who went to find out what an elephant was. Blind. One of them touched the leg of the elephant, the limb, and concluded that an elephant is like a big pillar and very rough. And somebody had warned him before he went, don't go too close, you might be crushed under it. The second blind man explored the elephant, touched the ear of the tail of the elephant. And he concluded that an elephant is like a bathroom brush with bristles, which keeps moving all the time. And if you go too close, you might get stuck on your cheek with it. Sharp bristles. Okay. The third man touched the trunk of the elephant. And he concluded that an elephant is like a big rubber hose which keeps moving most of the time and makes sounds like pss, pss, all the time. Now started this battle between the three to decide which is the correct definition of an elephant. One man said this is the right definition, the other said this is the right. So there was a big fight, and then there were fist cuffs and so on. It's at this point that a man who is not blind walked in. And he said, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? He said, no, see, this guy doesn't know what an elephant is. And he said, wait, what is the definition of an elephant? He said, this is this. He said, okay, fine. Let me tell you, I can see the elephant. You're all right. But you're also wrong, absolutely wrong. You're not absolutely right, and you're absolutely, you're right because what you can touch and find, you're right. The other guy, what he can find, he's right. But I can see it, an elephant is much more than you can think of. It's much greater, it's much bigger. You have no idea what it is. You know only those small parts. It's the same with this universal truth, which is the core of our consciousness. It's so infinite that we can only hope to touch some ends. And we shouldn't think that we are the only right fellows. The other guy may be right. He may be touching something else. He or she. If this is understood, then the mind becomes, it's not tolerance. The mind becomes expanded and learns to accept and understand things. It's not tolerance. I don't like the word tolerance. Tolerance means I am right, this fellow is not right, but it's okay, let him survive. Let him survive. People always use the word tolerance. I would rather say equal than tolerant. So, anyway, as the last story for the evening, I rest my case. We have a big jury here. So. Thank you very much.
If you have questions, please pass them to the aisle and then pass them down this way, and I'll get them in some fashion.
You'll sit here?
I'll sit here.
I asked them to get a chair, but it's okay.
This is good.
How are you?
Why are India, Tibet, and Nepal the source of so much knowledge? What happened there?
Can you give me that?
Yes,
Because I
yes,
tend
right
to
there.
forget, Why is... Okay. Beautiful questions. Let me tell you, before we start this question answer session, that I don't guarantee that I have answers to all questions. I'm very happy to say I don't know when I don't know. I mean, that's the problem with us. We can never say I don't know. And if you don't know, you cannot start any inquiry or explanation if you know everything, So I'll try my best. If I can understand the question, I'll try to answer as much as I know. So the first question, why is India, Tibet, and what is the other thing? Nepal, the source of much knowledge? Honestly, I don't know. Except that I think in the early years, 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, when the rest of the world was thinking about material advancement, the ancients of this land, maybe because of the food or because of the environment or whatever, were thinking more about internal matters. So they were experimenting. When you say rishi, it means a scientist actually. A scientist who is looking into one's inner psyche. When others were busy looking at the outer, so we have this Western civilization which has grown. These were looking at the internal aspects. So therefore it was passed down from teacher to disciple to teacher to disciple and so on till it became a whole body of knowledge which is available to human beings to explore and understand. I think that's why this land has been the source of so much knowledge. But please, having said this, I wouldn't say that knowledge was only confined to this geographical location. I have been looking closely at some of the ancient mystical works like the Kabbalah, which is in a different geographical location altogether. Especially the wonderful commentary on the Kabbalah called the Zohar of Rabbi Salman Ben Yochai. It's interesting because it's in a different language and it is approached from a different angle, but you look at it and you'll find that somewhere there is a meeting place. I'll give you an example. Moses is supposed to have gone up the Mount of Sinai. Sinai? Okay. And then he saw the burning bush, whatever it is. And he is wondering what's this all about. So he's about to get in there onto the mountain. Well, we call it the burning bush. I think there was a light behind the bush, whatever. So, and then he hears a voice which says, Moses, you're stepping on sacred ground, take off your shoes. That's what we do when we go to temples and so on. In a way, it's inconvenient. I love churches because you don't have to take off anything. You can go. Anyway, we have to take off our shoes. So Moses was instructed, take off your shoes. And then he goes up. And he wonders, what's this that's going on? What is this light? And the voice from somewhere says, this is what is written, Ahiye Asher Ahiye in Hebrew, which means, I am that I am. He says, who are you? What is this? He says, I am that I am. Ahiye Asher Ahiye. I am that I am. And the definition of the supreme reality with no conditionings whatever in the ancient Upanishads is called Tat, which means that. And it is also I am, the real I. Ramana Maharshi said all his life and finally said, I am the reality within me. So does I am that I am match with I am that? Tattvamasi. Okay, so let's move to the next question. can one practice yoga without reference to God? No offense to those who are theists, let me tell you that you can practice yoga without God in inverted commas, in quotes. Because from the yogic point of view, purification of the mind and finding the inner self is sufficient without a deity. You don't need to have a deity to practice yoga. I'm not saying that you should not have a deity. I'm saying even if you don't have a deity, you can still practice yoga. And when the mind becomes quiet, because the definition of yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. That means when the conflicts and confusions and disturbances and distractions of the mind stuff are completely removed, when the mind becomes calm and quiet, and then you can decide if God exists or not. There is no precondition. There is no precondition. And it's a step-by-step exercise. It doesn't depend on your faith. It depends on how much you do and what you do and how properly and regularly you do.
I heard you say in one of your talks that this approach is more powerful than mushrooms. Were you referring to meditation?
What mushrooms?
Mushrooms. Hallucinogenic mushrooms.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what I meant was there is no doubt that mushrooms and other psychedelic substances do alter your state of consciousness to some extent. There's no doubt about that. However, it's not the safe thing to do. That's what I meant. Because afterwards you have no control over it. And you might just end up as an addict. This happens not only in the West, please. It also happens in India. I know lots of sadhus who started off well and then became addicts to cannabis. And so after that, something more. So, while it's for a normal human being, sometimes it's difficult to even believe that there may be other states of consciousness. So people resort to chemicals to experience it. I feel that if you do it under control with somebody, I don't do it. Please don't get wrong ideas. I have gone through it, of course, I know it. Then once you've seen it, you can get out of it and go to the original instead of depending on the chemicals. It is possible. I'll give you a very good example. Most people know Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, who now lives in Hawaii. You know that he was experimenting with LSD. He doesn't need it anymore. He doesn't experiment anymore. Fine. He found a Nim Karoli Baba who helped him to come out of it. But showed him that what you're looking for is found here. Don't get into this. Get out. But it requires a great deal of a great person to pull you out of this. So meanwhile, there is no denying the fact that this mushroom or whatever can, or lysergic acid, can cause altered state of consciousness. Is not the safe thing to do. There are other beautiful alternate ways of getting into, to understand this state of mind. That's what I meant.
It wasn't my question, but thank you. Certain religions, like the Hindu religion, says that, and perhaps even Buddhism says that we can become free of the cycle of rebirth. If one becomes enlightened, does one become one with something that doesn't come back, or do we keep coming back until everyone gets free?
I might forget. Yeah. Now, the soul or the mind or the individual, once he has touched the universal or broken free of, let's say, broken free of all conditioning, and sees everything as one, truly, suppose, then still there is a small ego which experiences it, right? There is an ego which experiences it. But it's a purified ego, it may be, however purified. So, now the question is, after the physical body dies, does that ego exist? We think the ego exists, but is not the ego in the narrow sense of the term. An ego which understands, very subtle ego, almost like a ghost, like a frame, not in a bad way, which understands that it's not different but part of the whole. W-H-O-L-E, whole, not H-O-L-E, whole. And then, generally, it doesn't need to come back because there are no desires to be fulfilled. We come back because we still have desires to be fulfilled. I'm telling you the Hindu theory of reincarnation. You don't have to come back. So, most people don't, perhaps. But, if you're eternally then free, you may come back too if you feel like it. You're not bound. It's not like normally coming back. Okay. Now there is this beautiful way of thinking in the Buddhist Mahayana tradition, not in the other tradition, but in the Mahayana tradition, which is called the Bodhisattva. Now, Bodhisattva is one who has experienced nirvana. His one foot is across the border. He knows he's there, he knows. But he refuses to put the other foot also across the line, saying, until I bring as many people as possible into this. Otherwise I'm being very selfish into this nirvana. If I can bring, so let me come back again and again till I bring all these people to nirvana. This is called a bodhisattva. Now it is loaded with danger because when you come back to this world, there is suffering, there is pain, but one is ready to go through it and say, it doesn't matter, I still need to take people back. This is the concept of the bodhisattva. Therefore, sometimes great yogis come back to do some good work and go back again. But it is not, it's out of their own desire, not because they are left with any other mundane desires.
All of the divisiveness in the world today, is it more than there's ever been, or are we just noticing it more?
I think divisiveness was always there. But I think it might have expanded a little more nowadays. But it was there, but then we didn't have internet, so we didn't come to know about it. It is also partly, yes. But I think it might have increased a little.
And how do we overcome the divisiveness when people are seemingly attacking each other? How do you not feel attacked?
I think this unity should start with us, not through external reformation. External reformation is necessary, like in India, for instance, if there is a red light, there's always a policeman around, otherwise we might just close our eyes and drive off. So enforcement, something is necessary, I agree, we need to have. But the real thing can happen, unity can happen only when the mind changes. It has to start here. So if I change and I feel this unity deep down in myself, saying that the same self occupies everybody else's heart, if I begin to understand that, that goes a long way in bringing about change. So I'm saying the change should start here. While external changes and reformations are necessary, they're not the whole solution for this. The solution should come from within. If one man changes, I think many can change, but genuinely change. I look at it this way, that forget about soul, Brahman, reality, Atman, everything. Let's look at common facts, normal facts. Actually, we are all one. You know how? We have roughly the same kind of ambitions. We have anger in us, we have love in us, we have hatred in us, we have jealousy in us. Everyone has it. The object of your anger may be different from the object of my anger, but we all have one common factor, anger. You may be jealous of something, I may be jealous of, I'm not, I may be jealous of something else, right? But the jealousy is a common factor. I may love something, you may love something else, but love is a common factor. Same way. So if it is a common factor, I'm saying maybe it's all one mind, which is expressing itself from different points. So if it is, suppose, speculatively, if it is one mind, we are one humanity, because we have common factors, then it's quite reasonable to think that if there is a change happening in one end, it may be reflected to the other end. Well, it happens in negative ways too. One leader who is, I'm not referring to anybody, please, one person who is closed, who is not open, let's say, who has ideas which are detrimental to human progress in general. Suppose there is one person. Now, that person can influence a number of people, even simply by his presence. We know the World War II. One person. And a strong person. And a man with conviction. Wrong, of course. In retrospect, we know it was wrong. But so, thousands of people were influenced by it. It also helps if you have a band and a trumpet and a march and a uniform. That's why in our school there is no uniform. We don't like it. Then you come together. It's like a tribe. So I'm saying if that is possible, why can't goodness also be possible? If there's one good man, one good person, he can influence thousands of people. Only thing is the good is little more difficult than the negative, because that happens easily. This is a little difficult. So if we say that let me change, forget about the world, sorry. Oh, I'll drink, I don't need really. Thank you. Then I think we can change the world. The great Swami Vivekananda said, give me 5 people, like-minded people, I can change the world. Just before he passed away, a few months before, he said, I couldn't even find one. So this is possible.
Thank you. What is your definition of God? What is our connection to God as you define it?
My definitions of God have no relevance. I may define God in my own way. It has no relevance actually, because there are many definitions. I would say that when I say God, I'm thinking of a universal principle which is behind all the differences that we see, which is one, in which is no divisions, and which is equal for all human beings. This is my concept. Not even the creator or any such thing, because I believe in evolution. World has evolved. There is a built-in intelligence in organic matter which has brought about this evolution. So there don't need to be somebody sitting down and you think every human being is made in a workshop and thrown down. Which world are we living in? So for me, God means goodness, an universal principle, the essence of life which is experienced when our hearts and minds have become quiet and tranquil and loving. That being who is also part of us, I call God. I think this is God according to me. I may be wrong. Like, we just discussed the story of the elephant.
What's the name of the script of the 12 states that you started? 12? 12? Did you say there were 12 states? Wake
12 verses, yeah.
Oh.
Oh, I said there is a small Upanishad which has only 12 verses.
12 verses.
Yes.
It's
Yeah, so what is...
Mandukya.
What's the name of the script of the 12 states? Not 12 states. I said there is a small Upanishad, a text, which has only 12, we call it slokas. What shall we? Verses, 12 verses, which talk about the 3 states and the 4th, which is the witness of all. It's not that there are 12 states. It's called the Mandukya Upanishad. Fortunately, it's available now. All these are available in English translation, so it's much more easier, because even in India, people have forgotten this ancient language. I don't know why they think of it as anything connected with religion. It's an ancient, rich language in which mathematics, astronomy, medical books, so many things were written. Now, unfortunately, few people know it, the language. In fact, if you are a scholar in Sanskrit, it's a disqualification. Now, you don't get any job. I'm serious. A man came to me and said he doesn't have a job. I said, why? Because he said, I'm a Sanskrit Pandit. I said, I'll give you a job. I need a Sanskrit teacher. It's such a beautiful language. And please don't consider it as a Hindu language. It has no denominations. It's an ancient language. It's a rich language. And I think it's interesting. In the university in Bonn, in Germany, there are 2 chairs for Sanskrit. And both chairs are occupied by Germans. Where are the universities in India where we have even 2 chairs for Sanskrit? And who is occupying it? So, I think I'm not a nationalist that way, but this is a language, it's a rich language. It doesn't matter where it came from. I think it should be studied. I'm saying this because we have English translations available now. So you should have a couple of more translations and look at all of them, because it may be interpreted in different ways, but they can't escape the truth. The basic would be there. Or you can go on to Google and search in. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. In the modern world, the biggest God with the biggest G is Google. Because it's omniscient. You can get all information. It may be wrong sometimes, but...
You had a teacher, a guru, a master. Can one make true spiritual progress without a guru?
Think me that. I think it's difficult. It's a little difficult. But I wouldn't rule it out. It's possible. It's possible. There have been cases of people who have just... but it's tough. It's good to have somebody who has already walked on this largely unexplored territory, so that you don't fall into pitfalls and move forward. It's good that somebody guides you. But unfortunately, I always tell people it's better not to have a guru than to fall into the hands of a wrong guru. When your whole life has been spent and when you're about to rest in peace, you're all agitated. You don't know what to do, and all your money has also been taken away. Ashram has been built. So one has to be very careful with this matter. But I think there are many textbooks available for us as guides, so better to go that way. And if you really find a serious teacher, someone who you... then it's a good idea to link with that person. But don't fall for somebody suddenly by looking at a person. live with a person for some time before taking a decision. Because a person may be very attractive, but there may not be the stuff inside. Or a person may look like an idiot, but he may be having great. You never know. In this matter, it's very tricky. But I personally believe that, this is my personal belief, that if a person is seriously seeking something spiritual, then somehow or the other he'll find the right person. It may not be somebody spectacular, but you find it right. Since we are on this subject, can I take 2 minutes to tell you a little story? Or, it's a Sufi story. That's the last of the book.
Oh, there are many questions.
I think we need to wind up at some point.
We have one more.
So, this is a Sufi story actually. It's from Sufi sources. There was this man who used to live. Sufi stories always have a Middle Eastern background scenario. It could be anywhere else. So, there was this man who, when he was very young, as a child, he was very poor. Very poor. And he wanted to become rich, therefore. But he also had, deep down, earning for spiritual fulfillment, for spiritual development. But in his desire for becoming rich, the other desire got submerged. So he put all his energy into it and became a rich man. Now, in the Middle Eastern context, when you become a rich man, which means you're a merchant with many caravans, that's what it means. So he became a big man. When he turned 55, he said to himself, hey, I think it's about time I went back to my spiritual pursuit. Because now I have everything that money can buy, and I haven't been able to buy happiness. So I need to look back at those little spark which I had when I was a child. Perhaps it can be flamed into a fire again. So he gave up all his possessions, kept just enough money to have a small little, we call it kutir in India, a hut, HUT hut, a small little cabin, let's say, in the oasis, in that country where there are mostly deserts. An oasis is the best place to live in, with water and so on. So he got a little cabin in the oasis, and then all these years, while he was trying to become rich, he still had his interest in spiritual matters. So he had collected a lot of books. He had a big library, so he took all his books. And he said, now I have stopped all other activities. I'm going to study my books before it gets too late, before I grow old and blind. Let me go through this, and probably I'll figure out how to get out of this. Now, having been a rich man for a long time, especially in the Middle East and in India and so on, not here, there are 5 or 6 people who are around you who make everything for you, including a cup of tea. So you even forget how to make a cup of tea. I do. I can make a cup of tea. So he also needed somebody to cook for him. He needed food. So he went to the village and found somebody who was a good cook and took him along. So here he was in this cabin with his books, with good food available because there was a cook, and he was studying his books, and he spent 7 years studying his books. At the end of 7 years, it occurred to him that this what I am seeking probably needs a teacher. It's not. There are so many views, so many books, so many practices. Probably I need a guide. It took him 7 years. Then he said, let me look for a guide. So he came out and started searching in the deserts, in the caves. And then he saw a vulnerable looking man coming. You know what vulnerable means in spiritual terms or religious? Flowing beard, turban in the head, green, rosaries, and a beautiful, charming face, smiling. There was a man coming. He went to him and said, I think you are a great spiritual being. Can you please accept me as your disciple? And the man said, just a minute, 2 points. First, how do you know that I'm great spiritual teacher. Do I look like? How do spiritual teachers look? Okay, that's one point. The second is, you seem to be a sincere guy. I don't mind guiding you, but I have a problem. What's the problem? He said, because I can't take you as my disciple without asking my teacher, my guru, my master. Well, in the story, it's my sheikh. He said, then why don't you ask your master and take me as a disciple? I'm very keen, I'm very sincere. He said, no, that's the problem. It's 7 years since my master disappeared. I don't know where he is. If I find him, and when I find him, I will ask him, and then I will take you as my disciple, because I'm sure you're a sincere guy. So this guy said, so where is he? He said, I'm searching for him. I haven't found him. He said, okay. 2 people searching for a person is better than 1, right? So can you describe your master to me, and both of us can start searching for him. So he said, well, he's a short man, and he doesn't wear any garments above the waist. He just wears something like a loincloth. And he usually has a towel thrown on his right shoulder. And he's an excellent cook. So this guy said, he said, wait a minute. Now say that again. So he said, okay. He said, sir, can you please come with me to my house? Because your description seems to fit my cook. So he said, sure. So they went there. And as soon as they went, the kitchen door opened and the cook came out with a towel on his right shoulder. And this vulnerable looking man fell flat, prostrated before him and said, oh, my master, where have you been? He said, I was here 7 years with this guy. He said, but he's still searching for a teacher. He said, yeah, it took me 7 years to convince him that he needed a teacher. Right. So then he said, now you take care of him because I have other work to do, and walked away from that. I don't know, this is a Sufi story, like a Zen koan. It has many meanings. I leave it to you to decide. Because we have our preconceived ideas. If that is not there, this is not a guru.
I think that's the best place to end.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being so attentive and listening. Thank you.
There are lots of
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
There are books and DVDs and CDs available outside. And please find out about Sri M's Blossom Foundation. They do a lot of good work, and they could use your donations. Thank you so much for coming.
Right.